And behind the millionaires, women supporting, guiding, celebrating women with their wealth. You will hear from women millionaires, how they got there, what they wish they had known, what got them to be a millionaire, the emotional side, the spiritual side, the practical side of wealth. You'll also get to meet the women behind the scenes helping make it happen. Let's dive into Women Behind the Millions. I am Jessica Weaver, your host, best-selling author of 3 books, wealth advisor, and founder of the Women's Wealth Boutique. Let's start meeting the women. Hello there, it is Jessica Weaver. Welcome to Women Behind the Millions. I am so excited for tonight's episode. I'm actually going to start today's episode with a quote from her chapter. We have with us one of our authors of our newest book, Rise and Find, of Pink Fix Productions. And she actually has 2 really good quotes. I can't choose which one. The first one, I'm not going to limit myself just because people won't accept the fact that I can do something else. And boy, is that true, right? We tend to stay in these roles that people have put on us, right? These expectations that we should act a certain way, operate a certain way. Even when you look at somebody's potential, right? When you look at somebody's potential, you're viewing what you would do in their situation. Right? It has nothing to do with that person. If I was in their shoes, this is what I would do. So when we look at that, it's really just a projection of you, right? As we always say, life is a mirror. But Dolly Parton said this, I'm not going to limit myself just because people won't accept the fact that I can do something else. And then her other quote, am I good enough? Yes, I am. Michelle Obama. Am I good enough? When we question ourselves over and over again, am I good enough? Am I worthy? Will I ever be good enough? Even when we have the success pouring in, the money pouring in, can I trust this? Will it keep coming? Is it going to stop? Am I going to sabotage that question? And that's really what I've found with this book, Rise and Find, is how much pressure we put on ourselves as women. And it's not just at work. It's with our relationships, with our spouse, our partners, our kids, our parents. It's the pressure that we put on ourselves with our money. Do I have enough? I was just on with a new client. She's like, I just feel like we are kind of floundering. We're just like floating along and nothing's really happening. We're not making enough moves. We're not doing enough. We're not saving enough. We don't have enough. Then we put a plan together and she's like, I want to feel financially secure. Well, what has to happen for you to feel that? Is it actively setting aside money? Is it understanding the investments? Is it seeing and witnessing the growth month after month? Is it understanding markets? Or 2, but we really do. We struggle with, am I enough? Am I doing enough? Is my business enough? And because that is so implanted in us, in our minds, that oftentimes when we do have success, we don't celebrate because we're constantly on to that next thing. Yes, I have this new book out. Yes, I just got this new client, but I'm still not where I want to be. And so we're skipping over all the pleasures getting us there too. So I'm excited to talk about this topic with tonight's guest. Let's tell you a little bit about who we have with us. We have Bethany McCamish. She's a former teacher and TEDx speaker. Is currently the founder of Bethany Works, a strategic design studio, and host of the Unbreakable Brands podcast. Renowned as a brand strategist, web designer, and creative coach, her mission is centered around helping women lead businesses to be seen and get the visibility they deserve. With a Master of Arts in Teaching, Bachelor of Fine Arts, and a background in design, photography, and film study, Bethany brings in a unique blend of brand storytelling and expertise, including infusing her 5+ years as an educator to her agency, podcast, and live events. I love the word podcast too. Agency. I love the word agency when we're talking about people's brands. So let's bring to stage. Here we have Bethany McCamish. How are you tonight?
I am doing well, thank you.
Look at that power pose you have on there, Bethany.
Right.
Bam, there it is. What made you pick those 2 quotes for your chapter?
Well, a lot of my story was about finding what enough meant. And as someone who was often told I was both too much and not enough at the same time, um, I think that that's like those 2 things can exist at the same time and often exist at the same time for women. I just loved that quote from Michelle Obama because I felt like that was just really aligned with kind of my story, but then also the people that I help and their businesses.
Yes. Very true, Bethany. Now you start your chapter in a very fun way. Bubbles in a hot tub.
Swirling.
Okay, bubbles coming out of a hot tub. And you were surrounded by people who make a living by doing balloon art or
Mhm.
we've seen it all over Pinterest, Instagram, right? We know there is now, as we're filming this, coming up to Halloween, all over Instagram and TikTok, right? There's a woman in Texas who's making 7 figures doing pumpkin designs. We're just bringing buckets, boatloads of pumpkins to people's stoops, porches, and decorating it.
Yeah,
It's
it's
insane.
amazing.
So you talk about this group of people, and they were struggling in the balloon industry, we'll say, with carving out, their presence.
Mhm.
So take us to that moment. Bring us back into that hot tub with you.
Yes, yeah,
Telling
so
hot water in the bubbles. What was happening?
yeah, I was save for my friend who was sitting next to me, I was the only one in this hot tub, and I'd say there were, like, 9 to 12 people who was not in the balloon artistry industry, and so all of these folks knew each other, and they were exchanging stories, and it was really fun to listen to. They were talking about, like, challenging gender reveal clients and, like, balloon materials, like, things that I didn't know too much about, but one thing led to another, and they got to a point in the conversation where they were all saying it's such a saturated industry, like, there's so many people doing what we're doing now, we can't stand out, and we're really struggling to differentiate ourselves, and that just really struck me because and that's not unique to the balloon industry, but in my mind, I'm thinking this is the most niche industry you could be in. There's no way this is, quote, "saturated," like, think about an industry like photography or even law, like, there's so many other larger industries. So, I was like, "Wow, okay, even the most niche industry is feeling these same feelings," which is a common, um, feeling of not being seen and not being visible in whatever it is you're doing. And I knew as a brand strategist in the work that I do that it was because so many of those folks were focusing on business building and not focusing on building a brand, which is really essential to being able to stand out, being able to carve out your unique space, even within a unique niche, no matter how saturated it really is.
Yes. What brought you into this work, Bethany? Becoming a brand strategist, having your own agency.
I really got into design in undergrad. I got into all things art. I studied fine arts. I had a concentration in photography, but I was always very interested in the way that images have the power to shape perception and connection and understanding. And that's like where I started this work specifically was in undergrad. And then I was able to work in industry and teach later on. And so that started all of these things. As a kid, I was always thinking about art, but it's kind of like what people say, you don't wanna be a starving artist kind of thing, so it was a little bit scary to think about starting any sort of creative pursuit, but college just really solidified that for me. I didn't really care about that portion of it, but I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna make money from what I create, and I'm gonna figure out how to do that." So that was, like, my spark for this specific industry and field that I'm in.
Oh, yeah. Not being scared to launch something new, try something new, trial and error, learning. So that's what a lot of entrepreneurs, how they learn is, "I need to get my hands on it and figure this out," as I go through it. How many times do brands feel invisible?
I mean, I don't wanna generalize, like, I don't know for sure, this isn't a statistic, but almost every client I've worked with, and I've worked with hundreds at this point, come to me at a point of feeling invisible or feeling like they can't be seen within their space. And that is the problem that I solve as a brand strategist. So it's a very common problem to feel invisible, or like I've heard it phrased like screaming into the void, or not growing is another way people say that, and that really that's a symptom of like not being visible too.
Yes, I see it, and I'll relate this to a lot of traditional industries. So, financial industry, very traditional, right? Banking, probably law, very traditional ones. And there are very few vendors, and they cater just to, we'll say, financial firms. And what happens, Bethany, and you know this, every website looks the same. It's just a different shade of navy or dark green or gray. For two, and look, this is great because we know your compliance. Yes, you know your compliance, but we literally are blending in and looking like the same, and even the differentiators, well, we really take our time with our clients, right? We have that service. That's pretty much the same message across the board, or they use the canned stuff on social media. What would you say to these firms?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I there's a lot to say to these firms. I think in that traditional sphere, there is a huge tendency to lean into everything about themselves. Like, having their compliance front and center and saying how much they care for a client is really thinking about themselves. And your brand has absolutely nothing to do with you. And I think that's a hard thing for people to swallow, but it's the truth because your brand like lives in the minds of your audience, of your people, the people that you're serving. It's what they're telling their friends, it's what they're texting and tweeting about your specific business. And if you haven't positioned yourself to speak to your people and you've picked navy and cookie cutter copy and messaging, then you're going to feel invisible and going to feel like you can't stand out and gain traction, especially like I've noticed in the past. I mean, I've had my agency for 6 years. I would say in the last 4 at least, there is a massive shift for people caring less and less about traditional businesses and caring so much more about the people behind them, who is there that they're gonna get to work with and connect with, and how is that going to help them specifically. So, I think that's where I'd start.
Mhm. Exactly, where do they even start?
Yeah.
And it feels they're missing a personality
Mm.
for it too, right? Like, integrating personal pieces, if they're funny. I remember my PR woman back in the day, it's like, "I feel like you're funnier than you let people on to be." And you're right, you feel you need to act a certain way, have a certain dialogue to be professional. But I love people like you, Bethany, because you're shaking that up. It's like, let's bring in your personality. Let's bring in some other elements to you to make you a more dynamic person for
Ye
people to engage with.
Yeah, exactly, and people connect with a sense of belonging and a sense of self, and if you can provide those things, then you're gonna be able to connect with them, and, that to me is the difference between building a business and a brand too. Like, you can absolutely build a business and not think about or consider or put time and effort into your brand and your branding. You can even, like, build a business with a DIY logo and get to 6 figures, but I can pretty much guarantee that when you hit that plateau of feeling invisible, not being able to level up, feeling really stuck and stagnant, it's because you haven't focused on your brand, which means you haven't focused on your people. And if you invest in that and cultivate that, that's usually your next step to getting to multiple 6 figures, 7 figures, or wherever it is you wanna be within your business. Like, they go hand in hand. And people, I think like, "Okay, I started a business, I'm gonna jump right into marketing." But really, like, in order for marketing to be effective, you need a solid brand foundation, and you have to think about that. And I talk about that in terms of, like, what does that look like? In the chapter, it's the 3 Ps. So, it's your promise, your position, and your presence. Like, those are the pieces that you can start to think about when you're cultivating your brand.
I love the 3 Ps. She does, ladies, break it down beautifully in her chapter on that, the promise, positioning, and presence, right? How are you
Mhm.
out there in the world? How are people seeing it? You mentioned brands are a symbiotic relationship between you and your clients. Talk to
Mm.
us what goes into that symbiotic relationship.
Yeah, so that goes back to what I was saying about, like, your brand lives in the minds of your clients and your audience, right? So it's what they're thinking about you, it's what they're feeling, and you have the power to shape that. You have the full power to shape your brand through your branding, which is like your visuals, that's your presence piece, through your messaging, what you're saying and putting out there, through where you're putting yourself in the market. But it's a give and take. So I like to use like a Venn diagram example. If you go back to middle school, you can remember the Venn diagrams, right? I love a Venn diagram. But like on one side of your company is like what you care about and what you offer. And the other side is what your clients care about and what they need. And where those overlap, along with, of course, the gap in the market, is like where that relationship can really start to grow and bloom because you're both finding that common ground together, which I think is really powerful. And I think if you can kind of shift that thinking around like, I can't be seen, I can't stand out, I'm screaming into the void of like, oh, I have complete power over this. Like, I have my own agency over my brand and I can help shape how people are connecting with it and their perspective. Like, it puts it back in your hands and is more about relationship building, which I think is really cool.
Oh, yes. Yes. Let's talk about iconic brands.
Mm.
Yes, you brought up it. Oh, this so you look like this is your favorite topic. What are those standout iconic brands to you, Bethany, and what makes them so iconic?
Yeah, this is
They
a
kinda
good one.
like, they last the test of time.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's what I was gonna say is, like, they've stood the test of time. It's
Mhm.
not necessarily I think in the online space especially, which is where a lot of entrepreneurs are starting right now, it can be easy to get bogged down with vanity metrics and metrics that don't necessarily matter in the long term. And it can be easy to start thinking about short term longevity. Like the majority of entrepreneurs I've met within the online space aren't even necessarily thinking about an exit plan or growth to that extent. And I think iconic brands are thinking about that.
Mhm.
They've one taken the time to fully cultivate that relationship with their clients and audience and invested, the money and energy into making that happen and how they're presenting themselves. And they've put a strategy in place to make that happen. And they've done that over and over on repeat over time because iconic brands are the brands that like we end up becoming household names, end up replacing, like, we don't call it tissue, we call it Kleenex for a reason. It's because that's an iconic brand and they've done so great at, like, putting themselves there for however long in the right place, in the right position with a strategy that works for them, which I think is really powerful. And they're doing that through the 3 Ps, which I talk about in the chapters. You should definitely dive into that. And, I think that there's something to be said about, like, don't think too small about yourself and your brand. And the other thing about that is they're innovating. They're not necessarily reinventing the wheel. I talk about this a little bit in the chapter. Like, I think there's this idea of like, "Oh, to be an iconic brand, I have to invent the iPhone." And it's like, no, you don't actually have to invent the iPhone. I mean, incredible if you invent the next big thing, if that's like for you. But you can also be like a company like Skims and just reinvent the idea of shapewear, something that's been around since the beginning. Like it does the same thing, but you're going to think about it in a new way and innovate and solve a problem with the thing. So it's really about that piece. I think when it comes to iconic brands, you don't necessarily have to be the next Apple to be an iconic brand.
Yes. You write about it's not just building a business, it's building a legacy. So when I
Yeah.
think iconic, that's what I see legacy. And as you explained earlier, it's not that short minded. I had this idea. How am I going to turn a profit today? It's like, how am I going to leave that lasting mark
Yeah.
beyond this? And that's why we love publishing books because to us, that's a legacy. But you have written words that's going to be there well beyond your years here on this earth. Your business now has a legacy and it has ways to keep growing and people keep talking about you even if you're no longer here.
Mhm.
Podcast, another way for it too. So be as you mentioned, long-term focus.
Right.
I remember, and it was one entrepreneurial book that I read, and it said there's entrepreneurs and then there are, the business owners and leaders. And
Mm.
to be a business owner and leader, you need to prepare your business to continue to run if you're no longer in the day-to-day operations of it.
Mhm.
And me personally, we talk a lot, and I just had to speak at engagements on this, on the valuation of a business. So not just does it help with the legacy and becoming a brand icon, who doesn't want to be an iconic brand, right? Too? But the value is there too. It just makes it more profitable for you. Would you hate to sell if you want to sell eventually, right? We're gonna pass it on to the next person to take it off to the next piece as well for it too. How about I want to switch gears here, Bethany. Yeah. Talk to me about the blue skirt.
Okay. I was wondering when that was gonna come in.
I know.
So, we can definitely talk about that.
Was really excited to talk about iconic brands, right? You think of like Chanel number 5, right? Like those like luxury, all that kind of stuff. Well, let's switch gears here. Let's go back to your childhood. You had a very different childhood
Mhm.
growing up. You seem to be talking about it more and more openly as well. It felt like the blue skirt was kind of this crossroads for you when you were younger.
Yeah, definitely. So for just to give a little context for those of you listening, I grew up in what I call a cult. It was a Christian founded cult-ish, but they definitely made up their own rules. And I say that in a way of like, it's not like the sensational like Manson family cult or commune. It was really structured in a way that it could walk a really fine line between like functioning in normal society, but then having a very structured and controlling presence within the family structures and the structure itself. So one of those many rules was around women's positions in leadership, but also how women could dress and compose themselves. And so my blue skirt story is just around me being a little kid, and finding this blue skirt at a thrift store that hit just above my knee. And that was like I had gone to church in that skirt because I had come with a friend. I had stayed at my friend's house, which, like I'd already done a sleepover, which was a whole other thing. And
That
yeah. So I came in and my legs were showing, and that was like a big no. So, I was taken out to the car and had to change and put on the long ankle length skirt that I had been wearing the day before so that I could be more appropriate for church. And, that's just like an insight into me feeling like, "Oh, I also didn't think about the skirt in a way of like, it's shameful. I'm gonna be a stumbling block for men even though I'm a child, like, it's showing too much of my body." And so there were, so many nuances and layers to that, but that was definitely a visual representation of me feeling like too much, but also not enough at the same time, like I couldn't be more than, what I was physically. And within this space too, as a woman, your only future was to be married, ideally by the time you're 18 and no later, to be at home and be a wife and mother. But with that was an attitude of servitude and complete submission to your husband and the leaders of the church. So you weren't to be like, even when I became a teacher later, some of the comments was like, oh, like women shouldn't really be in those positions of leadership. So when I say that, it's like it's to the extreme, within this specific space, but my blue skirt was like, that's what I wanted to wear, like, I wanted to be seen as cute and fun and modern and cool, and, like, that wasn't even a possibility because it was already too much. I was showing too much of my body, but I was also not enough because I wasn't, like, the good Christian girl covering up, so
Yeah, and to think of, where you've gone with your business, embracing what makes everybody so unique
right,
and
yes.
giving them the confidence to be loud about what makes them, right? As much that I say big, big, bright, bold, and beautiful every single day, right? You are giving them the space to be able to do that. It's just incredible, Bethany.
Yeah,
Yeah, you worked your butt off to get some freedom from that,
I
going
really did.
you probably no support, I'm sure no support at home.
No.
Support yourself through college, working multiple jobs, and then going on and also getting your master's, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
How
also
important
getting that.
too. What gave you the courage to push through when you probably all you had was resistance?
Yeah, there's a lot of resistance. I mean, I wish it was like there was like one key thing that I could go back to, but really it was like a slow evolution and process of finding myself, listening to my gut of like all along, like, this doesn't quite feel right. Like this doesn't quite match. And like, I did give it an honest go of like, okay, like, yeah, I want to get married and have all these kids. And like I tried to keep those thoughts front and center as a young teen, preteen, because remember, like your life starts at 18 there. Sure. So I tried to keep those thoughts, like, front and center, but, like,
Mhm.
there was always something in me that just it didn't feel right. It didn't feel like it was, the place for me, the path I needed to be on. I mean, I remember sitting next to this woman in a church pew, and she had bruises on her arms, and we actively as a church knew that her husband was abusing her physically. And it was like a situation of we're just gonna pray about it. That's all we can do for them is pray about it. And she was like pulling her sleeves down to cover it up. And my thought was like, that's all we can do for her. And I was very young, maybe like 9 years old when I saw that. But I was like, there was just that feeling of like, that's not quite right. Like,
Felt
so
the
those, yeah, like those over and over again, like on repeat is what led to, okay, I'm ready to like figure something different out because this is just not fitting with who I am as a person.
yeah, and it's such and there's so many conflicts going on in your mind as you're observing that, you're being taught a certain way by the elders who you're supposed to respect, and yet internally, like, I'm having a conflict here. I don't understand why we can't just help this person who's right next to me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Why can't we help them? And it goes back to like it would, open up a whole other can of worms of them having to hold a lot of people accountable within that space, which wasn't really gonna happen. But yeah, that was very hard for me to constantly go back to like, oh, but because I feel that, am I a bad person? Because that was the other thing. Am I a sinner? Am I like there's something wrong with me? Like, ooh, I'm not good enough or Christian enough in this scenario because I'm having these thoughts of like, that's not right, you know? So that was always a challenge.
Yes. What is your relationship like now with your parents? Is our relationship
No, there's no relationship. I've been no contact with them for quite a few years now, yeah.
for your own mental well-being?
Yeah, and also through their choice too. I think they also
Yep.
felt similarly, so
Right, time to Do you have siblings, Bethany?
I do, yeah. I have a brother and 2 sisters. My brother, also, like, got out, so to speak. He's amazing and incredible, and we're really close. And then I have 2 other younger sisters who are much younger than me, and, they, like, stayed with, the
Mm.
parents and the family. And I will say my parents have since left that particular church, if you wanna call it that, and they've joined other ones that are extreme in their views, but not so extreme as what I was raised in.
Okay.
Not so extreme as in, like, you know, ankle length skirts, head coverings type of deal. So there's layers to that too.
Yes, yes, and if your sisters ever came to you, I'm sure in a heartbeat you would be there.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. For the longest time, I was always like, I have to keep a spare room in my house because if they ever are like, "Hey, I need some help," or "I need a minute out of whatever situation I'm in," like, it's there for them.
Yeah. Well, thank you for opening up about this, Bethany.
Yeah, of course.
I'm sure it can be hard to talk about and go back to that time of your life, but thank you for sharing because whether it's a call or an abusive relationship, or we see it all the time with women, and I just had a call with a woman, and you need to know your limit, and it was financial abuse, which is still abuse, and in New
Mhm.
Jersey, it is, uh, right, there's a law, that is a crime, financial abuse, and you need to know what your limit is and stay true to that limit because, you can't just keep making excuses, for it either. Now, having gone through what you've gone through, you talk in your chapter about the fears women have around, being out there. building out their brand. I've gone through where, you're big, bright, and bold, and then you get too much attention and you're like, "Okay, I gotta, like, hide again." Or is it too much? Or people are gonna get annoyed seeing it all or get frustrated or critical or jealous and whatnot. What are some of the fears that you see women have when they are taking the time to build out their brand or why they aren't? Maybe they're avoiding it.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think there's a couple here. The big one that you touched on just now is what I like to call, like, that visible vulnerability of, like, "Oh my gosh, okay, I'm out there, but I don't wanna get too big." And I actually have heard that even from some of my clients. "I don't wanna get too big. I don't wanna be, too out there. I just wanna keep it manageable," is a phrase, and I think there's a lot of valid truth in keeping everything manageable for yourself, but there's also for a lot of folks an underlying fear of, like, "Okay, now that I am getting attention and I'm visible and people see me, it feels really vulnerable." It's scary because you put yourself out there in a way that allows rejection, and humans don't love rejection, like, in general, and you put yourself out there in a way that, like, people can say no to you, or they can tell you what you've already probably told yourself, like the too much, not enough conversation we've been having, and that can feel so scary, and I think that, just being able to have someone this is where I feel like business coaches and mentors come in because 'cause they're so vital in helping support and remove some of those fears like that it's like, it's okay to be seen, and, like, why are we afraid as women to take up space and have that kind of visibility? And so I think being able to dive into that a little bit deeper is helpful, and of course, a therapist is also helpful too. I don't wanna ever, like, replace that role, but that's a big fear of, like, what if I become too big where people are gonna, have opinions about me? But they're gonna have opinions about you no matter whether you're out there being visible or not, and I always say, like, go back to the impact and what you're doing for other people and let that steer the way rather than the fear steering the way.
Yes. Oh, I like that, putting steer somebody's when someone puts steer in the back seat, it's never gonna go away. It's
Right.
still gonna be there, but as you said, it's not driving the car anymore. It's not driving your decisions, with it because when fear makes the decisions, we don't get what we want. What
Yeah. Yeah, totally, and I think another big fear I talked about in the book was that, there's a fear of, like, okay, if I, focus on my brand and make it all about the people that I'm working about, then it's not really gonna be about me, and, like, I want it to be about me and what I like and what I'm drawn to and passionate about, but that's, like, where I say, "Okay, it's of course it's about you, like, you're doing this because you felt passionate about your specific service, or you're really great at it, and you know that that can help people. And so it is about you in that way, but, like, the way that you're positioning and marketing just isn't gonna be about you like that. And I think being able to separate that a little bit is helpful, and also being able to recognize, like, I'm a complex human, you're a complex human, my business and brand doesn't need to have all of those complex human traits in it. It can be specific to, whatever it is I'm doing, and then I can be my own whole human outside of that. And I think that's also a big transition a lot of folks go through, especially like year 5-ish in their business.
Oh, sure. And it's an evolution, right? You're evolving as a person and should be evolving too, I need to get it all done. I wanna have it all perfect before I launch it.
Yeah, and then never touch it again.
You just
Works.
and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Versus you could do soft launches with different components of it
Right.
as it comes together, and I just love to me, a brand is like an experience, right? What's the experience you're giving the people in your world? Let them in on the creation of the brands, right? Get
Right.
their thoughts, their feedback as well. As you said, brand is nothing to do with you, but the people behind you
Mhm.
that you
Yeah.
are there for to service, to sell, to support as well. We,
Right.
we talked about so many good things. That visible vulnerability, as you just mentioned, to the brand first, marketing second. We talked about iconic brands and building out that legacy. Bethany, we could have a whole season with you on
Yeah, we went all over the place.
I love brands, like my favorite thing to talk about. Brands and money. But we're gonna take a quick commercial break. Do not go anywhere because Bethany's gonna give us her Rise and Find tip with our newest book, Rise and Find, and then the trend she's noticing, a few more questions. So stay with us, ladies. At Think Fix Production, your story matters, your voice matters, you matter. It is a privilege to hear your story because of the truth behind it. But it also takes a courageous woman to be bold enough to tell their story, knowing some will judge you, but most, yes, most, will applaud you. We want you to step into being a thought leader and making change in this world because let's face it, lady, you won't feel satisfied until you make your mark on the world. We accomplish this through several forms of media, podcasts, book publishing, magazines, TV shows, and events. We take you through our 5-step proven process to becoming a thought leader, from getting clarity over your mission, building confidence to use your voice, leveraging the media to declare your mission, aligning with strategic partners, and how to launch your legacy. Yes, we build a platform with you so you can ignite your revolution. All right, ladies, we are back with Bethany McCamish. She is a brand strategist. She has her own branding agency. It's incredible. So we're at that part of the show, Bethany, where I get to hear your Rise and Find tip. What do you have for us tonight?
So my big takeaway is that I think in order for your marketing and your business to be effective and successful, you will benefit greatly from building a solid brand by focusing on those 3 Ps. So brand comes first, then you can think about all the other pieces, and it's never too late to start considering that in relation to your business.
Yeah. So you're saying even if you have a business that's established, it's never too late to take a look at, maybe do a brand refresh.
Mhm.
What is that experience? What are people thinking and talking about when it comes to your business? And I'm guessing, Bethany, you'll get more referrals that way too.
Oh, yeah. Yes, you will see the impact of that. I mean, it is your key to the next level up, more visibility, uh, taking a look at your brand and your brand foundations.
And we love referrals. Yeah. They're warm leads. They usually are clones of our clients that we already love to work with.
Exactly.
Much better than trying to find new cold leads. Letting people talking about your brand in the positive way. They feel like they belong to it, like they've come home.
Mhm.
What any brand should feel like they, yeah, found their people. They found their people that speak their language, their tribe. I've heard it as well. Me too. Oh,
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's that sense of self, that sense of belonging. That's what your brand cultivates.
sense of belonging. I love it. I love it, Bethany. How about your rise and find trend? What are you noticing with businesses? Women-owned businesses, we'll say.
Yeah, I think women specifically have a leg up because they're not minimizing or diminishing the values of aesthetic and message. And as humans in general, we're very influenced by these things in our buying decisions, in our ability to connect. And I think that that is such a big advantage. It's not the bros in business who might devalue that because it's feminine or pretty. I
Mhm.
think that women, like, fully embrace that, and over time, the women who do that and put their brands first, they have a major advantage in visibility, but also in building connection with their people over time, which leads to that legacy building and that iconic brand building that we were talking about earlier, and so I think that's a really beautiful thing that, women are doing overall as a trend.
Yes, bringing in those different components to it. That is fantastic, Bethany. You think of a resume, right? And, we're in the process of hiring right now. And think of all of the skills that you do, let's say, as a working mom. Like, you forget to bring those in to the resume, but also into the brand. There's so many different components of your life. So that's awesome to hear. Women are embracing it as well. Well, we have, as we're rounding out our interview with Bethany, we have one more question for you.
What makes you a woman behind the millions?
I would say
It's
that. Oh, sorry. Did I cut you off?
You're good.
I would say that I am there building the foundations for these women-led, women-owned businesses to make the millions on a daily basis. So that's my job. And I thrive when other people thrive in our scene, specifically my clients. Like nothing makes me happier when they're like, "Oh my gosh, I got featured in Well and Good. I was in InStyle magazine." And it's all because they found this thing we did and they resonated with my brand. And it's like, that's what I'm here for, and I want that to happen over and over again because when women have money, they have economic empowerment, they make the world a better place. And that's a statistic, like a truth, but also a belief at the same
Oh,
time.
yes. What is it? Companies and countries that are run by women are 80% less corrupt.
Mhm. Yeah, imagine that. And that is so important. And so if I can be any part of that in like building strong brand foundations for a business, like that's what I'm about. That makes me the woman behind the millions.
Yes. And to take, going through that culture, religious group as a child where women were pretty powerless
Right.
and feel used for their bodies to now let's get more money in the hands of more women.
Yes.
Them being in leadership roles, that's incredible, Bethany.
Thank
Incredible
you.
to take that pain and push it into your purpose in this world. Amazing. Let's get people excited about their businesses again too.
Yes. Yeah, that is very exciting.
That's a side effect, right?
Yes.
It's a symptom of working with you when they're like, that personality coming back into it, that excitement, new energy
Yes.
in it. And
Yeah, they're confident. They're like, "Wow, I feel legit now. I'm
mm,
speaking directly to my people. Like I have an increase in revenue." And they show up more as a result of it because they're like, "Wow, I feel really good about all of this. So I feel like I can put myself out there more."
yes, the more authentic
Yeah.
and trusting that intuition that you learned as a young girl, trusting that
Mm.
intuition and allowing themselves to be seen, be heard, and be themselves.
Right, exactly.
Is
Yes.
Bethany, part two. Where can everybody find you, Bethany?
Yes. So I am most active on the gram at Bethany Works Design. That's my tag in terms of socials. I'm also on TikTok with just my name, Bethany McCamish. If you want to see behind the scenes, like my dogs and my trips, that's where you can find me. My agency is BethanyWorks.com and my podcast is UnbreakableBrands.com.
Amazing. Oh, it was so great talking with you today. Do not forget to check out our chapter in Rise and Find coming November 14th, 2024. We're going to end here with a little video on what Rise and Find is all about. It's an incredible anthology book. And then stay with us for the after show as I dive in to recap what we all talked about with Bethany and then how it applies to your business and the finances side of things. We'll see you soon, ladies.
As women, we wear many hats: mother, professional, partner, leader. But what if we didn't have to fit into a box? Introducing Rise and Find, an ambitious woman's guide to building her dream life. A powerful new anthology written by 13 inspiring women who have dared to dream bigger, push boundaries, and break free from limitations. Inside these pages, you'll find actionable advice on everything from personal growth and financial wellness to career advancement and self-care, all from the women who have mastered their fields. Whether you're looking to elevate your career, nurture your relationships, or reclaim your personal power, Rise and Find has the tools and inspiration you need to build your dream life. Get your copy of Rise and Find and join the movement of ambitious women rising together. Your dream life is waiting. Let's rise together.
All right, ladies, that was amazing talking with Bethany and learning all about building out your brand, the 3 Ps, what goes into it, iconic brands, right? We all have those iconic brands that we just full of respect, we admire, we talk about for it too. And let's now segue into the finances of it, right? Building out a brand, does it make sense financially to do so? And we touched on it a little bit towards the end of as you build out your brand, you are going to get more people talking about you, but being drawn to you as well. And the big thing are referrals. So, especially if you're in the financial services industry, we know that referrals, they're going to convert about 70% conversion rate versus cold leads, which is more around 20-30%. Even if you're really good, it's still lower. So we love when people are drawn to us, that they talk about us and they have such an amazing experience that they want to bring other people to you. I remember the moment it all changed for me, and I hosted my very own female-focused event. This was when was this? Probably 2015, I wanna say. I was about 5 years into the industry, and I finally got the courage to do a female-only event because I went to a female conference for female advisors. And so I was very excited. It was a woman in transition was the theme of it. I had mimosas, I had chocolate tastings, and I had little pumpkins because it was the fall with everybody's packet. And when I saw people scribbling down notes, slide after slide as I'm talking, I was like, wow, they're really getting this information. One of my clients, she was head of a divorce support group. She brought women. And then at the end, I got all the women to speak about a vulnerable moment. I can't even remember how I positioned it to get them all to start talking about it. But it was the first time I was at an event and I hosted an event where I got women to open up. And I feel that is one of my superpowers is getting women to open up about their money, feeling safe and secure and heard and understood for it too. And after that, I realized how much I love creating these experiences for women. Now, fast forward to 2024, and we had launched our first retreat down at a lake in North Carolina. And I just had a call with one of our female advisors to join us for the retreat. She's like, I got to tell you, Jess, I am not into the woo-woo stuff, the heart healing, the sound bath, the breath work. But I decided I'm going to go all in on this. And she said, I have never been more relaxed at an event. I've never felt more comfortable to share. She openly spoke about what's happening with her and her father and her mother and some family dynamics. She was able to write her father a letter, a forgiveness letter, and burn it and say everything that she has always needed to say, but knew she wouldn't be heard by him. She could put it on that letter, burn it, and release it, right? Release those cords, release the wounds. And she's like, I came back and I'm telling everybody about this event. And they can't believe that I did it because I'm not about that stuff. But I've been talking about it. And that's the power of an experience. When people can't stop talking about what they just went through with you, that's when you know you're onto something. And that is marketing. That is that organic marketing that people can't stop talking and raving about it. You. Now, where that goes, we've always grown very organically. One project inspired to the next, and the inspiration keeps going and going and going, and our brand keeps evolving and changing as well for it too. But that one little initial event in my office, now going to statewide retreats next year, international retreats, you can see that evolution of it there, and it brings in the clients, but it's like the raving clients, right? The clients that they want to talk about you, they're going to send you more and more people. So financially, having a brand to me is the only way, really is the only way to get it going and to get it building as well. And it makes it much more higher on the business valuation standpoint for it as well. And you get to spend less on marketing because you already have these organic influx of people talking about your business and your brand. And then, ladies, let's make it iconic. Or I joke world domination, but iconic is actually a more elegant way to say that. A brand, an iconic brand that's going to last the test of time. Well, thank you so much for joining us here on Women Behind the Millions. And do not forget to check our newest show, Care Conversations with Clarity. Amanda Stillwell, one of our amazing advisors at the Wealth Boutique. And she's going to showcase the Medicare, retirement, tax side of money. So you do not want to miss Amanda Stillwell's newest show, Care Conversations with Clarity. And we will see you all next week on Women Behind the Millions, our Rise and Find season. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. I love looking at all these different facets of our lives and how they're all intertwining together. It is just incredible. But thank you for supporting our show and being here with us. We will see you next week. Hey, money queens, looking to get your wealth to that next level, 7, 8, 9 figures? Follow us on Instagram at pinkfixmymoney and at Women's Wealth Boutique for more millionaire money tips.